Okay. Think we're rolling. Are we live? I think we're live. Here we are. Welcome to Live at 5, everyone. Thanks for joining me here in the great outdoors, the studio for Earth Day. I decided that I think today is International Earth Day or something like that. I remember it started just before I was born in 1970. So it's about to be 51 years. Today's the 51st celebration. And I remember the first time that I was cognizant of it. I think I was in college, actually. It was the first time I heard of it. And, it was quite a pleasant outdoor. It was like an outdoor event, I think I must have gone to. And I didn't really even realize it was 20 years old at that point. I guess it took a while for it to catch on. But, I don't plan to make a big deal about it. But you know what? Earth Day, it's exciting. So we celebrate the Earth. We should certainly enjoy the Earth. Look at this gorgeous picture I took. This is a panorama type photo of Colorado and the rushing waterfall. Came down from over there, and went around and went down over here. It was a really gorgeous day in Rocky Mountain National Park, one of my favorite parts of Colorado. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And where I was from in Virginia, we used to enjoy the oceans, the mountains, the fall colors. Here in Colorado, we don't have oceans or a lot of fall colors, a little bit, but we do have one of the most beautiful places. Colorado routinely impresses. It's just like one of the most beautiful, beautiful places to be. And we're happy to be here in winter and summer. People come skiing, but really the summer is probably more beautiful, more magnificent than even than the wonderful winters that we have. I think, as I always try to find a connection between what's on our minds and what's going on in the broader world and either the Parsha or certainly just Jewish thought in general. And, Earth Day, the celebration of the earth that we've been given, to some degree, we could say every Shabbos we have a mini Earth Day. We celebrate the fact that God created for us a beautiful world that we can enjoy, utilize, we can put to work in our national goals as the holy Jewish people. But even if you don't think along those lines every week, every Shabbos, which you might do, certainly the idea of viewing the earth as a precious commodity, as a valuable resource not to squander, is an ancient Jewish idea. It says right there in the Torah itself that we have that we are prohibited from wasting the world's resources that it gives us. We can't waste, we can't destroy wantonly, or just to waste the world that we've been given. We're to utilize it. We're to enjoy it. We're to put it into practice, or put it to work for us in accomplishing our human goals, our spiritual goals, Jewish goals. There's a everything that we have in our world is an opportunity, as a precious resource. There's one amazing story in the book of Genesis, in which Jacob is in a bit of a risky and worrisome situation. He's coming back to the land of Canaan, which would one day be the land of Israel. And he's worried about meeting up with his twin brother Esau, who last he knew was trying to kill him. So he was very concerned for his own life, the life of his family, and everyone that was with him. And yet, having crossed over the river is the Yabok River, as they're on their way back. So it says that he himself went back for something that he forgot. It's described by our historic commentaries as pachim ketanim, some small thing, some little thing that he left behind. And he went back, even in a very risky situation. And in fact, he was actually attacked right there on the other side of the river where he had gone back. And our sages say that there's something strange going on, something interesting, something educational, informative. Why would he put himself in potential jeopardy for this little object that we don't even know what it is necessarily? What was it? But But we see that it was so important to him to not leave it behind. And in part, say our sages, that when a righteous person, the way that he or she relates to the possessions they have, the world around them, is that every single thing that I have is meaningful to me, to utilize in some meaningful way. If God didn't want me to use it in something, in some way, he wouldn't have given it to me. Why do I have it? It's it's for me to use somewhere. And so I wouldn't waste it. I wouldn't squander it. I wouldn't mistreat it. I wouldn't think of it, as if it's a little nothing and just throw it away. I have to take care of it. It's a resource. It's something I'm going to use. I remember also had a very interesting teacher of mine. We were talking about bigger picture issues, like the meaning of life and stuff and purpose. What's your purpose? Nothing small or anything. He gave us the following sort of parable to think about the question. And he said, imagine that a soldier on the battlefield is knocked unconscious and the battle moves away and he's left there and he wakes up alone after a time with amnesia and he can't remember who he is or where he is or what's going on. So what's he going to do? How's he going to solve that all alone? He wakes up and he wonders, who am I? So what does he do? Well, the first thing he does is he looks down, he looks at himself, he looks all around. Well, I seem to be in military uniform. What else do I have? Am I carrying the keys to the Jeep? Am I carrying a radio? Am I carrying a weapon? You could figure out who you are by what you've been armed with, what you've been, what the supply officer gave you. Do you drive the Jeep? You the communications officer? Are you infantry? What are you carrying in your hand? Look around you. Look what you've got. The things that have been put into your possession for your use can sometimes help us to understand who we are, what we're supposed to do. I mean, what are my resources? What is the world around? What opportunities does the world around me provide? When that's really the perspective of that we take about the world at large. It's valuable. It's to be enjoyed. It's to be utilized. It's to be treasured. It's a tool and a resource for us, for human beings. Back in the creation story, God creates the heavens and the earth, and then he creates the water, and then he creates dry land, and he creates the heavenly bodies, the stars in the sky, etc., and trees and fish and animals, and finally human beings at the very end. And some say, well, look, what do we last? As we would say, what am I, chopped liver? What's humankind going at the end? Don't we have any, shouldn't we be a little earlier in the game? Why are we late to the table with the last thing in creation? And in part, the point of that story, the point of the timing, of the chronology, the fact that humankind is created only at the end is to say, you see all this that I've created for you? This is for you. You are the point of it all. And it's all here for you. I got it all ready for you. That's the attitude and the perspective that we take. Certainly the earth is to be treasured and enjoyed and utilized. And if there's so if we're celebrating, I don't know, what do we do for celebrating Earth Day? Go for a walk, get out and get some fresh air, go watch the sunset after Mincha, and and enjoy yourself and enjoy your world and utilize it for the right reasons. That's the thing. It's a good resource for you. So this one is only mildly touched up by Photoshop. You know what I mean? It looked like that, but I added some green over here and a little, whatever, bumped up the contrast. Never believe anything you see anymore.
Your screen.
But it's a pretty.
Tried everything.
What was that? Oh, let me. Sorry. If you're with me in the studio and you'd love to comment on the wonderful Zoom background, we'll have time for that after the show. Okay. Meanwhile, friends, I wanted to direct our attention today to another wonderful topic because I couldn't just can't let this Parsha go by. Cannot let the Parsha. So many beautiful things in here that we need to stand to think about together for a little bit. As we mentioned earlier this week, when we get to the end of the week on Shabbos and we're ready to read from the Torah together communally, all over the world, the Jewish people are reading 2 parshas this week. Acharemos and Kedoshim. And we've talked a little bit already this week about the first of the two. Let's talk about the second one. The name is Kedoshim, and from the word Kadosh, which means holy. And that phrase that the parsha is named for, the Torah is telling us to be holy. So if this is not your first go round at Live at 5, I try to end my shows with the blessing. Have a healthy day. Have a holy day. We're both, we're trying to be well and utilize any wellness that we've been given, any health, any moments of life to strive for holiness. Holiness should be a goal of ours. I don't know how many of us would, if I said, what are top 3 adjectives that you'd like, for them to say about you on your epitaph? Would you put in the top 3? Would you put holy? Well, I would hope so. It's God certainly, I think, wants us to be holy. He says so at the beginning of the parsha. Thou shalt be holy. Be holy. Now, maybe it's just not clear what that means. There's actually a lot of discussion about how to do that. What does that mean, be holy? And not necessarily so obvious. The one might think that being holy would be, well, by doing all the commandments. Let's say God says what to do, and I guess if we do those things, then we'll be holy, right? The problem with thinking that way is there's a list of 613 mitzvahs, and one of them is be holy. So if being holy just meant do all the other 612, we need another mitzvah, to say do all the others. One mitzvah says, no, really, you have to really do all the other mitzvahs. That would make no sense. This must be something more than just, the sum total of all the other commandments that we get. What would that be? There are a couple of different ideas, and they're very important and they're beautiful ideas, and they're significant ideas. So one of them I want to share with you is the opinion of Nachmanides, a very famous comment that Nachmanides makes at the beginning of this parsha and in describing what holiness really is. And basically what he says is that for us, the achievement of holiness is when we can express restraint even in the area of something that is totally permissible. So let's just think about what that means a second. Restraint, meaning to say something that I may want or be tempted by, that I could express a degree of restraint to say, you know what, I'm going to hold on a minute, put the brakes on that. And Nachmanides was not talking about things that are problematic in any way. He's not talking about, expressing restraint, from a good-looking shrimp cocktail. That is an obvious thing that we have to avoid. He's talking about expressing restraint even in the realm of things that are otherwise fully permissible. And still yet, there's something about restraint which brings us to holiness. A lot of times, when I in the 2 or so decades I've been a Jewish educator in Denver, if I asked people, well, what do you think, what does holiness look like? So people's responses tend to be in a negative. Well, a holy person wouldn't do this, wouldn't do that, wouldn't do the other thing. There's certain things that we know that are non-holy behaviors, and a holy person should avoid those things. That's for sure. It's probably easier to describe it in the negative, in fact, than in the positive. A holy person would do this, that, and the other. We would say a holy person would not do this, that, and the other. That's the way we would describe it in the negative. Expressing restraint, even in regards to something that's otherwise not in and of itself problematic. So let me give you an example. One of the realms of life that one ought to consider striving for greatness and for holiness would be in terms of the words that we choose to say. There's a lot of room for greatness, or God forbid the opposite, when it comes to how we communicate with people, what we say to them. And in fact, as maybe we'll get to in a little bit, many of the specific things that are discussed in the Parsha have to do with speech. Okay? So holiness would mean here, according to Nachmanides, one would be holy when they can restrain their tongues from saying things. Not everything needs to be said. That's a very important principle in life. Things come up. You have an idea or something. There's a very great value in expressing restraint when it comes to what we say. In fact, in Pirkei Avos, and as we know and we've said that there's a great emphasis on the study of Pirkei Avos between Passover and Shavuos, like now. One of the things it says there, it extols the virtue of silence, being able to be quiet. A big toughie for me, this for sure. I'm a chatterbox, but silence. Somebody said, silence is golden. I think that's the common idiom. There's a tremendous value in silence. In fact, one of the beautiful teachings in Pirkei Avos says, it's the author of this teaching is Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. He was in a long line of incredible Jewish leaders. Hillel himself was a great grandfather of his. And he said, all my life, I grew up amongst sages, all my life. And I didn't find anything that was greater than silence. That's an amazing thing to say amongst, having that opportunity to be around people who they had so much wisdom to share. And yet he extolled above all else the value of silence. Being able to sit and sometimes just be quiet even with other people around, to just have an opportunity to experience that. If there's nothing that ought to be said, that needs to be said, sometimes silence is the best policy. And silence is sometimes a product of that restraint that we're talking about. There's a beautiful idea from the Vilna Gaon that was a great scholar of Europe of the 18th century. And he said that a person who can refrain from saying a word of Lashon Hara is going to be rewarded for all eternity with an unbelievable reward, the likes in which and the magnitude of which they could never imagine. And that's from restraining one's tongue, from refraining from saying one word of Lashon Hara. Imagine that. Restraining ourselves from holding one's back. That quality of self-restraint is fantastically powerful. Now, I will tell you a little. There's an interesting practice that I once learned about. I learned it from in the company of Rabbi Lawrence Kellerman, Leib Kellerman. He's an amazing educator. You can see a lot of his stuff available online, recordings of him, videos and things. My wife actually was an editor of one or two of his books in English, and he has a handful of them. And I got to know him a little bit personally, and he's not recently, but we brought him to Denver to teach once or twice. He would stay at our house. He's also a great skier, just incidentally. And Rabbi Kellerman was eating with us one time. It was a Shabbos lunch. And he shared the following idea. There's something that was suggested by another a great leader of several centuries ago. I believe it's the if I'm remembering this correctly, I'm not sure which one of the sages, a modern sage of the last 5 or 6 centuries. And he said that there's a tremendous value in a certain type of fasting. What does that mean? Fast, forgoing eating. But he was talking about not fasting a whole day. He was talking about leaving the last bite of dessert uneaten on your plate. That's it. The last. This is called. I remember it's the Tainus Arrivid. This is called the fast of one particular Rav Avram the Ravid. He was an amazing scholar, and he said that if you, in the midst of enjoying a delicious piece of chocolate pie at the end of a meal, if you are enjoying it so much, but you could hold yourself back from eating that last bite, leave it there sitting on your plate, that is as significant as fasting the entire day. Imagine, think about what that's like when it's a Jewish fast day, Yom Kippur, Tisha B'Av, one of the others. And, sometimes it's very hard not to eat. You get hungry and, you struggle with that. And, it could be tough. That same value, the same struggle, the same restraint, said this great scholar and Reb Kellerman taught it to us. He said, if you can just not eat that last piece of dessert. Why not? Because you should be able to express that degree of self-control, of restraint. Not because it's not good. It could be delicious. It could be you really want it. But you know what? You have to be in charge of your fork. And you can say to that fork, I'm going to take another bite. Or you can say to that fork, I'm done. Not when there's none left, but when you decide you're done. It's a tremendous degree of self-control and restraint that we could exercise. And I will tell you that I've tried it. Very powerful. There are a lot of great diet plans out there. There's the intermittent fasting diet plan. There's a lot of them out there. But I'll tell you that if you could develop a great degree of self-control and restraint, you won't need any of them because you'll be in the driver's seat. Now, that goes not just for eating, which is just a relatively small thing, frankly, but as a bigger picture, in the bigger scheme, in the grander scheme of things, that kind of ability to refrain from, to hold oneself back, to be choosy, and to make decisions like that, with that kind of self-control, that's holiness. That puts us in a position of tremendous holiness. Okay, and that's it's a super valuable perspective on it and lesson. Now, being that it's Earth Day, I want to just add one point to that. Maybe you're going to say, but Rabbi, you're wasting that delicious last piece of chocolate pie. What kind of thing is that? You told us that we don't waste. Here I've got to enjoy my world, and now I'm gonna throw away a piece of chocolate pie. Actually, what my wife would like to do is she'll say to me, "Is that your little leftover piece? I'll have that." So it doesn't always go to waste. But the truth is that that's not called wasting, even if you throw it away. You know why? Because that piece of chocolate pie that you're leaving uneaten on your plate, that is a piece of holiness because you've utilized it in a worthwhile spiritual accomplishment. You've achieved something with it. It's a tool of spiritual growth. You're developing your holiness. You're developing your restraint. And if that's what you do by leaving it uneaten, then that's very valuable. In that it's uneaten, you don't have to put it aside and save it for someone else or anything like that. You can let it go, and that's the perspective. Getting back to Earth Day, that's the perspective. Now, if we go and we look a little bit further into the parsha with this holiness parsha, it contains, the very beginning of the parsha contains some of the most beautiful commandments about making our world a peaceful world, about treating each other beautifully. The famous dictum of Rebbe Akiva that we spoke about on yesterday's show, love your fellow as yourself. It's right there in the opening lines of the parsha. One other facets, perhaps things connected to this idea of being holy, is treating each other in the most elevated way. And there, it's really there's a very incredible kind of a what's a good word in English for that? It's like well, it's an incredible list of things going in one to the other. That's not a very nice word, but it's a list. There's several mitzvahs about how we treat one another right there in a row that are amazing. So, for example, it talks about, right there and there, right in this parsha is the prohibition of stealing. Okay, taking someone else's stealing, and a very, very, very significant prohibition. Something to be very careful about. The Talmud says that, frankly, it's not something that we could all really avoid very readily, because the Torah has such a lofty threshold of not stealing. It's called stealing if you wake someone up, you've stolen their sleep. If you so much as take a paper clip that wasn't really yours to take from the office. If you make a phone call on company time. There are so many things that we would be careful about. The threshold is that's a high set bar. The threshold of stealing is low. We have to be really careful about that. But that's a first in the list. Then it talks as well about not taking revenge. Not taking revenge. Someone offended you. Someone said something they shouldn't. Someone did something to you that they shouldn't. Inappropriate. We're prohibited from taking revenge. I'm not talking about if they took money from you that you should be repaid. Certainly you're entitled to whatever you're entitled to, but that's not revenge. Revenge is that sweetness. I think one of my favorite lines from the second Star Trek movie, The Wrath of Khan, where Khan says, "Revenge is a dish best served cold and eaten with your hands." That's like not our perspective. We're Jews. We don't enjoy revenge. We don't take revenge. Vengeance is totally prohibited. And then the Torah goes so far in the next phrase to say, and don't bear a grudge. Don't bear a grudge. And that's even loftier. The Talmud basically says what it would look like, how a person could, stumble and take revenge or bear a grudge. So let's say, for example, it's Earth Day and you decide that the backyard needs some care. So you go and your lawnmower is broken. So you go next door. Hi, can I borrow your lawnmower? Okay. So your next door neighbor says, can't do it. Sorry. So you go home very frustrated. What kind of a neighbor is this guy? Won't lend me his lawnmower. I'm trying to do my yard. So fine, you'll figure it out. You go somewhere else. You repair your own. The next day, said neighbor comes to your door. Hi there. Can I borrow your rake? So if you say to him, you didn't lend me your lawnmower, I'm not lending you my rake. You just committed the offense of thou shalt not take revenge. You took revenge. He didn't lend you his lawnmower. You didn't lend him your rake. Revenge. You violated that prohibition. Let's say that he comes over. Hi, can I borrow the rake? And you say to him, yes, I lend my things. Now you violated the don't bear a grudge law, because that's bearing a grudge, because you rubbed his nose in it. Because obviously you're still upset about it because you brought it up to him in a not nice way. That's bearing a grudge. What's the alternative? I mean, how are you supposed to handle these things? So the Torah also says right there, it says, it says, you know what? You're supposed to be able to let people know when they've done something offensive to you. And in that way, you don't have to take revenge. You don't have to bear a grudge. You're supposed to just create peace. Now, that's a big conversation, and we only have a few more minutes left for today, so we're not going to get into the details. But understand that the goal is that you're not going to have these little petty problems with everybody, because you're not going to be taking revenge. You're not going to be bearing a grudge. You're just going to be able to settle things, and you're going to live in a world of peace. Then it says, "Ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha," love your fellow as yourself. And this is an incredibly lofty bar, who lives like this? I mean, I'm talking about myself here. We struggle with these kinds of things, Could I really say we don't ever bear a grudge? I wish I could say that. But God Almighty, who created us, he knows that we can achieve this, because otherwise he wouldn't have said that we have to do it. And it's not a best case scenario, if you could do it suggestions. These are the expectations. They're commandments. They're in the list of thou shalts, So we have to figure out how to do these things. We have to not cause each other pain, not take from each other, not rub each other's noses in it, not stand on our honor so much that, oh, he offended me, I'll get him back. I'll show him, I'll let everybody in town know what an XYZ he is. No. We're expected to treat everyone else the way we would like to be treated. And that's what it means, love your fellows yourself. As Hillel, the famous Hillel, told the prospective convert in the Talmud, in Shabbos, he said, there's a famous story, and this fellow came and said, look, Hillel, sage Rabbi Hillel, convert me to Judaism on condition you can teach me the entire Torah while I'm standing on one foot. So what did Hillel say to him? He said, he said, what is hateful to you, don't do to others. And then he said, the rest of the Torah is all the details. Now go and study them. But with that, Hillel meant to summarize the entire Torah. He was telling him, love your fellow as yourself means stuff that you wouldn't appreciate, don't do to other people. That's why you have to treat everyone the way you'd want to be treated. And that is a very lofty bar, perhaps, but God knows we can do it. That's, that's part of the picture of holiness, expressing restraint, things that we shouldn't do to others and we shouldn't say. And with that, not only will we live in a beautiful world, but it'll be peaceful and pleasant as well. Thanks very much for joining us today and this week in Live at 5. Have a healthy day and a holy day. And God willing, we'll see you next week, Monday, again at this time on Live at 5.